This week, we're tackling the backbone of our global energy system: coal, oil, and natural gas. These fuels have literally powered modern life, not just by lighting up our homes or fueling our transportation, but by showing up in everything from pharmaceuticals to plastics and even the asphalt under our feet. It's everywhere, and because our whole infrastructure is so deeply rooted in these sources, shifting away is a massive global challenge. If you're into unpacking the real geopolitical and energy stories that shape our world, make sure to subscribe now so you don't miss out on more deep dives like this. Alright, let's jump in. So, let's kick things off by talking about oil. When people hear the word oil, they might just think of gasoline or jet fuel, but the story is much bigger. We've relied on oil for well over a century. Today, in 2025, the world still consumes over 104 million barrels of oil per day. It's not just fuel for cars and jets. Oil derivatives are in plastics, pharmaceuticals, and even the asphalt on our roads. Let's put that into perspective. Roughly 50% of global oil is used for transportation, but a huge portion is woven into the very fabric of modern life, creating everything from the plastic in your phone to the synthetic fibers in your clothes. And of course, oil isn't just about energy, it's about leverage. Nations have shaped entire foreign policy strategies around oil security. The United States has long maintained naval dominance to keep global oil shipping lanes like the Strait of Hormuz open. China, aware of its own energy vulnerabilities, has built up strategic petroleum reserves and cultivated energy relationships across Africa, the Middle East, and Venezuela. Meanwhile, OPEC Plus isn't just a cartel adjusting supply. It's a diplomatic bloc wielding influence. Their decisions don't just move prices, they reshape alliances, inflame tensions, and even dictate the pace of global inflation. That's why oil isn't just entrenched in our economies, it's woven into the architecture of global power. And when we talk about transitioning away from oil, the geopolitics get even more complex. Western nations that have already benefited from fossil fuels for decades are finding it easier to shift towards renewables. Emerging economies like India or parts of Brazil are still building their infrastructure, and they haven't had the same historical opportunities. It's a fair question. Is it just to ask these nations to leapfrog directly to renewables when the developed world got to grow using oil? And yes, we are exploring alternatives. There are bioplastics made from plant-based sources and bioasphalt from renewable materials, but these alternatives are still emerging and not yet at the scale to fully replace oil. Pipelines and infrastructure for oil are already in place, and not everyone is eager or able to switch overnight. That's why moving away from oil is a monumental and multifaceted challenge. Okay, let's move on to coal. A lot of people think of coal as this old, outdated fuel that's just dirty and should be gone tomorrow. But the reality is that coal is still deeply entrenched for a reason. It's cheap, it's abundant, and it's a very straightforward way to generate a lot of power quickly. Take Germany as a prime example. They've been one of the leading nations in pushing for a transition to renewable energy. They famously scaled up solar and wind at a rapid pace. But when the rubber meets the road and energy demand spikes, or when renewable output isn't enough, Germany has had to turn back to coal. They even had to restart some old coal plants in recent years during energy shortages. It's a perfect illustration that even countries deeply committed to green energy sometimes need coal as a backup. Globally, in 2025, we're seeing coal demand remain near historic highs. The US is seeing a bump in coal use this year because electricity demand is up and natural gas prices are high. And then there are countries like India who have made it clear that they plan to rely even more on coal to support their growing populations and economies. This is where the geopolitical contradictions come in. You have the Paris Agreement, where countries have pledged to phase out coal by 2040 to meet climate targets, but on the ground, the policies often diverge from those commitments. Nations are still investing in coal infrastructure or keeping coal plants on standby because they know that When there's a shortage or a spike in demand, coal is a safety net. Alright, let's shift gears to natural gas. Natural gas has often been called the bridge fuel, the idea being that it's cleaner than coal and oil, and it can help us transition towards a fully renewable energy future. But that bridge just keeps getting longer and longer because natural gas has become a major player in its own right. Let's start with the advantages. Natural gas burns cleaner than coal, producing about half the carbon dioxide emissions for the same amount of energy. It's also more flexible. Gas plants can ramp up and down quickly, which makes them a good partner for renewables that can be intermittent. That's why a lot of grids rely on natural gas to fill the gaps when the sun isn't shining or the wind isn't blowing. While natural gas is a step down in emissions compared to coal, it's not a zero emission solution. Now let's talk about transport and infrastructure. Natural gas can be moved by pipelines, which is the most common way to distribute it on land. But if you want to ship it overseas, you have to convert it into liquefied natural gas, or LNG. That involves cooling it down to super low temperatures to turn it into a liquid, shipping it on specialized tankers, and then regasifying it at the destination. It's a complex and costly process, which is why LNG infrastructure is a big deal and a big investment. And that's why phasing out natural gas is so difficult. Utilities have poured billions into pipelines, storage, and power plants, and that sunk investment locks in reliance for decades. Gas isn't just electricity, it's the quick, flexible backup that grids lean on when renewables falter, something batteries still can't fully replace at scale. And beyond the grid, fertilizer plants need it to make ammonia. Petrochemicals rely on it for plastics. Manufacturers use it for the kind of high heat processes electricity struggles to cover. When Europe lost Russian pipeline gas, fertilizer output collapsed almost overnight, rippling into food prices worldwide. Even in households, the shift won't be instant. Millions of homes depend on gas furnaces, and while heat pumps are a promising alternative, replacing every system across entire countries is a generational project. As we pull this all together, here's the reality check. In 2025, roughly 80% of the world's energy still comes from fossil fuels. We've woven fossil fuels into almost everything. Transitioning away isn't just a matter of swapping sources, it's a transformation of infrastructure, geopolitics, economics, and energy security. If you're interested in how countries are navigating this puzzle and which paths forward are realistic, make sure to subscribe. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I look forward to talking more about energy next week.